Hi, I'm Hop. You might remember me from such YouTube videos as the DPMS Kitty Kat Klone and the Trijicon RX01 Reflex. But I come before you good people today because I have combined them both into one gun. And in order to make it a little more fun to shoot, I've dropped in a CMMG 22 long rifle conversion kit. This thing is now extremely fun to shoot, although it doesn't have a lot of practical utility. I've personally never been a big believer in 22 long rifle as a training aid, and also this isn't very reliable. We'll get to that a little bit later in the video. For now, let's talk about how well the Reflex Sight works on a gooseneck mount for a fixed carry handle upper, because that's really the main draw here. Of all the annoying retro rifle meme pages on Instagram, I think Carry Handle Gang is the least annoying. That doesn't mean they're not wrong about basically everything they post all the time, but they've got a point. Carry handles do look pretty cool. This is the Trijicon RX01 Reflex. If you remember from the video that I did about the Trijicon Reflex sights, I prefer the RX01 to the RX30 and RX34. It's got a much smaller window, but it's a much smaller package, lighter overall. The smaller window actually obscures less of your vision than the massive window on the bigger ones. The RX01 is a cool little sight, limited application because it is passively illuminated, and that means it just doesn't work in as many varied conditions as a red dot would. When you put one of these things on a carry handle, it just so happens to barely fit on the Kitty Kat Klone upper. This is a 7.5-inch barrel with a pistol-length gas system and a fixed front sight base. There's not a lot of ways you can put an optic on this thing. You could, of course, put it on top of the carry handle, but it looks a little more retro and it looks more appropriate for a reflex sight to go on a gooseneck mount versus a piggyback mount. The polarizing filter that screws into the front of these things that allows you to make use of them in some additional lighting conditions, although it's not, great, is actually too long. That would run into the front sight base, so had to omit that thing. This provides a really surprisingly excellent sight picture. The dot floats just barely above the sights. I think you would consider it to be sort of like maybe slightly above lower 1/3 co-witness, but it's not absolute co-witness. You can still, use the dot and a clear window right over the top of the sights. You could also drop your eye down a little bit and just use the iron sights. This thing is extremely fun to shoot. The only use that makes a lot of sense to me for a Trijicon Reflex sight at this point, it's not a very practical optic. It is quite fun, and this is a quite fun gun. If you are curious, this thing doesn't work very well with night vision. It's really difficult to get your tube behind the carry handle in order to see down the length of the sight. You can sort of float the buffer tube on your face and shoot it cheek pistol style. I hate bringing that up, but it's of course very uncomfortable and not very practical at all. Cheek pistol. Cheek pistol. Fucking Jesus.
Delicious gas.
I toyed with the idea of adding a weapon light to turn this into some kind of early 2000s tactical monstrosity. I did get a Midwest Industries pick rail clamp that goes onto the A-frame front sight base. It serves as both a sling mount and a weapon accessory attachment point, although it's not a convenient one. It's still really hard to get a light in there in a way that doesn't get in the way of your hand and that you can actually activate. I had thought that if I mounted it on the right-hand side and then used a Surefire ST07 tape switch and just, taped it, rubber banded it, or adhered it to the side of the handguard, it would kind of work. But no, there's just really not enough space. I'm sure you could kind of make it work, but you would definitely regret doing it. The main event, so to speak, is the CMMG Bravo 22 long rifle conversion kit. This is the newest version that has the molded plastic monolithic body magazines, not the ones that are screwed together. This also has my shitty Form 1 rimfire suppressor on the end. If I were to take the conversion kit out, fire a round of 5.56 through this thing, it would probably blow up. But it does make rimfire shooting a whole lot more fun when it's suppressed. Although you get quite a lot of blowback through the charging handle when you shoot a conversion kit like this with a suppressor on, because 22 long rifle creates a lot of junk. Suppressors add back pressure, and unlike almost every other 22 long rifle gun on the market, this has got the AR charging handle gaps that can vent garbage straight back into your eyeballs. Less fun than you'd think. This thing is extremely fun to plink with, even though it's not very reliable. Reliability isn't a deal breaker for me when it's just a kind of a goof off gun. I mean, I've never shot a 1022 that worked, so why would I expect this to work 100% of the time either? Just to make sure it wasn't some kind of a receiver fitment issue, I've tested this conversion kit and these magazines on multiple ARs, upper and lower combinations. It seems to be pretty consistently unreliable on all of them. The main issue seems to be one of like feed angle. These magazines have quite a lot of forward and backward wobble in the magazine well. And the most common jam is a nose-up jam, where the round on deck goes into the top of the chamber. This is mostly an issue when trying to chamber the first round. If you can actually get it to chamber a round, which I can't, then it's usually pretty damn reliable. There seems to be kind of a strange trick to this, which is to hold the gun sideways and chamber around. And then if it actually goes into battery, basically flawless after that. I got a magazine here of CCI Minimag 40 grain solids. It's one of the most universally reliable rimfire loads in my experience. It doesn't have a weirdly shaped bullet. It's just a 40 grain round nose of the copper wash. Also, they tend to be pretty clean and pretty evenly shaped, so they're less likely to jam up as they go into the chamber. Even so, I suspect this will still jam up on the first round because of a weird feeding angle. So I can either try to hold the gun sideways, which for some reason seems to be pretty effective, or I can hold the magazine in a certain angle, try to make it a little more likely to chamber. I think we got one. Let's go for it. Yep. Yeah, that's kind of been pretty constant with this thing. If you're using decent ammunition and you can get the first round in the chamber, this thing runs extremely well. I can feel a whole lot of blowback in my cheek because of the suppressor, the fact that rimfire ammunition is quite dirty, and the fact that we've got a charging handle gap, because this is, at the end of the day, still an AR. Also, this video is actually sponsored for, I believe, the first time in this channel's history. So, special thanks to Eclipse Armory for agreeing to send me some ammunition so I can do these videos. We'll talk more about them later because, as I understand it, that's the proper way to do ad reads on YouTube. Now we have to get into the difficult and potentially unpopular part of the video, because I don't really think that 22 long rifle conversion kits or any, type of sub-caliber conversion kit has all that much in the way of training value. The thing that makes 223 more difficult to shoot than 22 long rifle is the muzzle blast, the muzzle climb, the recoil impulse. That's stuff that you cannot get any training value of when you're shooting 22 long rifle, which is much quieter, much more pleasant, has very little in the way of recoil. So you're not really training anything other than safety and trigger manipulations, all stuff that you can do dry fire at home while you're watching TV. There's also a slight change in the way this thing works in terms of the battery of arms. So like an AK magazine with a last round bolt hold open, it's actually just the bolt catching on the follower of the magazine. So even though it does lock open on empty, when you drop the magazine, the bolt goes home. That means that you're not training to use the bolt catch button like you would on your actual AR. So there's a lot of reasons why the training value of a 22 long rifle gun or conversion kit is somewhat diminished, in my opinion. That doesn't mean there's no training value, because trigger time on the range is always good for you. This is so much cheaper to shoot, that means you can get out there more often and shoot more often. Also, you have the ability to, for example, maybe do some moving and shooting drills on close range steel without having to worry as much about spalling, fragmentation, or just destroying your targets, or the range's targets. They might not be so happy to let you shoot 5.56 at a plate rack at 10 yards, Mr. Mark LaRue. You can also potentially make the case for the practicality of having an AR suppressed in 22 long rifle that's extremely quiet and low recoil and fast to shoot. However, if you are going to do that, it might be smart to actually build from the ground up a dedicated 22 long rifle upper, which you can do. CMMG makes these conversion kits, but they also make dedicated 22 barrels that allows you to essentially create yourself a dedicated 22 long rifle upper using this same, kind of straight blowback self-contained system, but without actually having to shoot it out of a 5.56 gun. The reasons you might not want to do that is because, one, accuracy is never going to be amazing. You're shooting the wrong size bullet for the barrel. It's certainly not a huge issue for shooting 22 at close range, but whatever. Also, the odds that your 22-0 is going to line up perfectly with your 5.56 is pretty low. Not really an issue if you're putting it on a red dot gun, and that's kind of what you're probably using it for anyway. But there's also the fact that you're not going to want to shoot a ton of 22 long rifle out of your 5.56 gun without an aggressive cleaning schedule. For example, example, lead from the bullets will sort of accumulate in the gas port, and that's not something you really want. Periodically, you're going to want to take the conversion kit out, fire an actual high-pressure round to try to clear some of the gunk out. You're also going to get a shitload of blowback into the receiver set and all of that stuff. You are also going to have a real issue if you use a 5.56 suppressor, particularly a modern style one that's 3D printed or welded. They're very hard to clean. You don't want to build up a whole bunch of 22 long rifle trash in there. If you're shooting with a dedicated 22 long rifle can, those are almost sacrificial cans in the sense that they're very cheap. They can almost always be taken apart and cleaned as well. So the leading buildup issue is not as big of a deal with an actual rimfire suppressor. But if you're willing to use a dedicated rimfire suppressor and you want to sort of mitigate the other issues that you can have with the conversion kit, then just building a dedicated upper is probably the better idea. It would definitely be cheaper and easier just to go with something like the Ruger 1022 Charger, which would give you all the same practical benefits, although there is something to be said for the AR platform and ergonomics, magazines, battery of arms, all that stuff that you get with a 22 conversion kit or a dedicated 22 AR upper versus something like a Ruger. One other neat benefit of using a dedicated 22 AR is that because you don't have any need of a buffer tube and spring system, you can actually just use a buffer tube delete and Picatinny adapter and then put a folding bracer stock on there, which would make it a much more compelling platform. Of course, you can do that with a 1022 Charger just the same. So there you go. We've added a couple more Ks to the increasingly convoluted acronym, the DPMS Kitty Kat Klone Conversion Kit, all spelled with Ks, of course, because alliteration is great. Also, consonants is cool sounding. A reminder, of course, that this is not a real DPMS, it is a clone, but that's okay because real DPMS Kitty Cats may be coming sometime in the near future from the newly revived DPMS, now under the brand ownership of Palmetto State Armory, with the help of Mike from H&R, formerly of Nodak Spud. Quite a lot of pedigree there. There is the potential for very cool stuff. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I said I was going to get back to the sponsor for this video, so let's do that now. This video has been generously sponsored by the guys over at Eclipse Armory. They've offered to send me some ammunition to make these videos possible, and you guys can go over to their website and buy ammunition. This sponsorship also complies with the 3 rules I have for sponsors on this channel. Number 1, it has to be somehow related to this channel, so somehow at least adjacent to guns, shooting, gear, night vision, stuff like that. Number 2, cannot create a conflict of interest. I'm not going to accept a sponsorship from a company whose products I intend to review. Eclipse Armory is an ammunition supplier, so no worries about that there. And number 3, it has to actually represent a good deal for you guys. It can't just be a total scam. If you give Eclipse Armory money, they will give you ammunition, and then you can go shooting, which is good for you, and also you're getting something for your money instead of just tossing it away into some weird nebulous pit. All that being said, go ahead and check out Eclipse Armory. There's going to be a link in the video description to a Linktree page, which will have all of the cool links that YouTube doesn't really like me posting in the description. If you'd like to support this channel more directly, you can do so via Subscribestar. If you do that, you'll be able to watch early videos, bonus videos, as well as the archived video version of the live show that I periodically do with Mr. Brassfax. So, thank you guys for watching. See you guys next time. Uh-oh. Just walk through the frame adjusting my package.